And I was like, bro, is that AI? He's like, nah, bro, I wouldn't play with you. And then my just time just stopped. You know what I'm saying? You could just imagine one of the world's most powerful politicians talking about something that you set up, even quoted the website.
Living a dream, living the African dream.
Welcome to the Pan African Hub, where we bridge the gap between the African continent and the global Black diaspora. I'm your host, Harrison Paul, and we post here regularly, so we would not want you to miss a thing. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you're a pal, short for Pan African Lifestyler, welcome home. Ahmed Kaballo, welcome to the Pan African Lifestyle Show, my brother.
Thank you for
What a
having.
pl- what a pleasure it is to have you on, my bro. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm really happy to be on your show. Pan African Lifestyle, the channel, came on my radar about 6 months ago, and I had to reach out to the owner and just say, I'm loving what you guys are doing. Really love
Wow.
what you guys are doing.
Wow, yeah.
It's a real honor and privilege to be here.
Wow. Well, that's really special. And honestly, the CEOs of this company are just real time, I want to say they do it with their heart and soul, like yourself. And yeah, different breed of people who can put themselves into something like this with it is such a determination it takes. You know what I mean? It is like going to war with a sword. You know what I mean? With like an AK-47, it's a psychological AK-47, and you know what I mean, in the trenches. But yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I wanted you to read your little monologue here, and so you can hear it because it's fantastic. So we have Ahmed Kaballo is a fearless journalist, historian, and visionary founder behind African Stream, a groundbreaking media platform that reclaims Africa's voice and reshapes global perception of the continent. His mission is rooted in a deep belief that Africa is more than just a future. It is the foundation for generational wealth, sovereignty, and global mobility for all who are bold enough to embrace it. Caballo's work stands at the crossroads of truth-telling and narrative power, inspiring a new era of African self-determination and cultural pride.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I don't know if I'm worthy of that, but thank
No,
you so much.
when you hear that, what do you feel?
I feel proud. I feel proud and humbled because, this all started from an idea,
Mm-hmm.
and people see you at you know, not the end of the journey, but the middle of the journey. They don't realize when we first started up African Stream, we weren't getting any traction. I remember I used to put in a family WhatsApp group, can you guys like this post? Share this post. And we knew we were doing good quality work because other pages would take our post it on their own page, and it would go viral. It was
Right,
just we just hadn't gained the visibility yet. We
right,
just hadn't kind of, the algorithm hadn't put us in front of the right people. But
right, right.
as soon as it did, then there was no looking back. And for that, I have to actually shout out Yassine Bey, the
Mm-hmm.
rapper, formerly known as
Mm,
Boss Def, because he was the first, I guess you call celebrity that found us and was just posting our stuff. And obviously, he has a lot of followers, but then he also has a lot of people with big following him. So
mm-hmm.
when you start showing up on pages like that, then it has a knock-on effect, and this
Mm-hmm.
person sees it, and then this person sees it, and before you know it, the basketball player, Kyrie Irving was sharing our stuff, and then we
Mm.
just started to grow from there. So yeah, I'm proud that you said those things because it's been a long journey, a difficult one.
Right.
We've been smeared, we've been attacked, we've had accountants steal our money. We've had right now the person that set up our website is blackmailing us. He's took it down and says, give us money or before we put it back up. So there's
You're joking.
a lot that goes into what we're doing, but this is part and parcel of the progress and the battle. sorry, the process and the battle. So we persevere and we move forward.
Wow. And can you imagine that? Like you can put trust in people, and that's, look, we're gonna get so much today into the bumps in the road in regards to,
Mm.
like, freeing a people psychologically. There is. So when you say a long journey, when you say it's been a long road, and obviously now you're seeing the fruits of that, and obviously now a lot of people are here today because they want to find out, very famous, attacks that have been on the platform African Stream, and still you've persevered. And I've noticed that actually you guys are still refusing, what I mean, to allow yourself to be silenced. But before we go in there, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, from a personal standpoint, how has your own personal journey shaped, this mission in general? Like, what can you tell us a little bit about Ahmed, and what brought you to say, I want to start this page?
That's a that's a big question, an interesting question. But I'll just start with my own upbringing. Like you, come from political background.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about your journey, but for me, my dad is a political figure in Sudan. Was always talking to me about politics. Son, we can't go. We're running low on petrol. When we were young, and he's not stopping off at Shell. I'm like, there's a petrol station there. He's like, no, we can't go to that one. They're doing this and that in Nigeria. And I was just thinking, I didn't
Mm.
understand.
That's
These little,
dad.
yeah, that's dad. That's
Mm.
dad. But my dad is older than me. So I'm now 36 and my
Mm.
dad is like 76, I believe. So there's like a
Mm.
40-year age gap. So when I
Mm.
was young, he never used to come watch me play football, never used to be interested, but he'd always be
Mm.
talking about politics. And when you're a
Mm.
kid, you kind of turn off. You're like, I don't want to hear that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm not interested in that. You coming to watch me play on Sunday? No, I'm not coming.
Right, right, right.
Um, but then, like with a lot of children that come from these types of background, the penny eventually drops.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so through life experience, the penny dropped. In school, the way they would talk about Africa, um, the things that not only school children used to say, but I had a PE teacher. I'm going to call him out. Actually, deserves to be called out. Mr. Yeomans. There was a He used to say stuff like, uh, "Feed the world, let them no feed Ahmed, let him know it's Christmas time." You know that song.
Wow,
Uh,
wow,
yeah, and
wow,
you make little jokes.
wow.
What I realized is when I was a kid, you kind of used to be ashamed of saying you were African, and
Yes.
then you grow older and you start thinking, why is that? Like, what is behind that? And how do
Wow.
we
What
change
a
that?
teacher.
Yeah. How do we change that? How do we change that? So yeah, I just went on a political journey, just was incessantly reading about this, reading about that. At school, uh history was just a waste of time. I remember they took us to France to see the Bayeux Tapestry, took us all the way on a ferry to look at some piece of cloth made by some women in France and women in Britain. And I'm thinking, why do I care about this?
Right.
And when I got to about 16, 17, 18, 19, and I start actually reading about my history, reading about the Kushite kingdom, reading about King Tahaka, who's referenced in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
reading about, the colonial period in Sudan, Patrice Lumumba, how this guy had an idea that threatened them so much that they assassinated him, dipped him in sulfuric acid, and kept nothing but his tooth. Just reading more
What
about
age
it.
you reading this? What age you reading this? Discovering this? How early?
Uh, I'd say 19,
That's
19,
quite early,
20.
dog.
Yeah, 19, 20,
Especially for
19, 20.
Europeans. African Americans were on their like revolutionary stuff from young, But I
Yeah.
felt like Europeans, we were just European Africans, we were just European kids. So that's quite even
Because
special.
the thing about it is, my parents, they came as refugees from Sudan, and they don't
Right.
really they were like what we call first arrivals. So there's a lot of Sudanese people in Birmingham now, but
Yeah.
when my parents went to Birmingham, they were like one of the only ones. So there was no one telling them, don't move to that area. It's a white
Mm-hmm.
working class. It's racist.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved to the middle of one of the biggest white working class council estates.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're kind of forced when you're in that environment, you're kind of forced to think about things from early. I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe if I'd have lived in a more mixed area, there wouldn't have been, the pressure to think about these things as much.
Yeah, no, for real. That's the truth.
Um, it's Malcolm mentions it in his autobiography. He said, I don't know if you probably do, but your viewers might not. The story of Malcolm is he was separated from his mom after his father was killed by the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. His father was tied to the train tracks because he was a Garveyite. He was part of the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association.
Mm-hmm.
And so his father was tied to the train tracks, and his father was putting money into insurance because he knew the type of activity that he was doing. He wanted to make sure that if anything happened to him, his family were
Mm-hmm.
protected.
Mm-hmm.
But the insurance company scammed the family out of the money. So they
Mm.
said that it was suicide. And obviously, his wife, Malcolm's mom, was like, how can somebody tie themselves to a train track? How can that
Crazy,
possibly
right?
be suicide? And then, and then, there was Malcolm's mom had all these, I think, 5 or 6 kids to look after, but she was a 7 day Adventist. And I think 7 day Adventists, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't eat pork. They don't eat pork. So a local neighbor felt sorry for this woman that has husbands killed. So they brought around a pig for them to eat. And Malcolm's mom refused because they don't eat pork. So because
Right.
she refused, they declared her mentally insane
Hmm.
and separated the kids. So Malcolm went to foster care. And then there's that famous part in the book where he's the smartest kid in the class. And the teacher asked him, "What do you want to be when you're older?" And he's like, "Maybe a lawyer, maybe a doctor." And he was like, the teacher was like, as a Negro, you should really think about doing something in the trade, something with your hands. So I say all that to say his experience being in white foster family, white schools, that's what radicalized him before he was actually radicalized, because he would later become radicalized in the prison by a member of the Nation of Islam. But it's when you're in that environment
Yeah.
where you're mistreated. He worked on a train and he's being mistreated by the bosses. In his foster care home, he was mistreated. In the school, he was mistreated. It forces you to think about things
Yeah.
at a young
Yeah.
age. And I
Yeah.
think for me, that definitely was the case. Definitely was the case.
And what you just said there is fantastic because that's one of the things that I feel the African Americans do better with than the Europeans in regards to the revolutionary mind. It's because obviously them being surrounded by their oppressor longer, you get to. I think James Baldwin has an amazing quote where he says, "I know you better than you know me." I've
Oh
had to
yeah, yeah,
look at you. I've had to look at you the whole and analyze you, what you like, what you don't like. You know what I mean? And it's made them really, really special. And then, they probably had the 50s and 60s where they thought they could, dance their way into their hearts and realize in the 60s that we're still getting killed, realize in the 70s still getting, but they had maybe the 40s and 50s to figure that out and realize it quicker. Whereas, you got migrants who, like our families who arrived and maybe
yeah,
thought to some degree we could later, very late, or we can work this thing out. And
yeah,
that makes me think of my next question because you're talking about you're forced to think about these things. You as the CEO of such a leading platform, you're definitely faced with, and I can hear you're obviously raised in Britain. You have the British accent as well. We'll try and get into that as well, but you have a really good scope of us as a diaspora, us as a one big family. And then you've obviously got this divide in a certain mentality that's happening back home and a certain mentality that's happening on the continent, right? Or rather, back home and in the diaspora. What has been your revelations trying to unify this mentality where maybe there are people back home who have not seen the oppressor up close as well as you have got the opportunity to?
Mm.
What has been the challenges and what has been the revelations that you've noticed about, learned about Africa?
That's a great question. Really good question. Let me answer it in two ways. Uh, so I think the experience in the diaspora will either make you, excuse my language, a coon
Mm-hmm.
that wants to integrate, that
Mm-hmm.
just wants to be seen like them, will do anything to fit in, or it'll make you a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenya, the British really did a good job in Kenya in terms of divide and rule. It's
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
most tribalist countries you can ever imagine. Like the things that people say about each tribe, it's getting better with the younger generation, but it's definitely still there. I had a Swahili teacher, for example.
Mm-hmm.
She's teaching me Swahili, an older sister, and she would just go on about tribes, cussing this tribe, that tribe. Don't work with these people, don't work with that people. But what I find interesting is when I went to university in Manchester, the Kenyans from all different tribes would be together in one group. They'd
Mm-hmm.
go out on the weekend together, they'd go to the clubs together, they'd eat out together. You'd never
Mm-hmm.
hear them talk about their tribes because when
Mm-hmm.
they get in such a hostile place, let's put it that
Mm-hmm.
way,
Mm-hmm.
all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, all of that tribalism doesn't matter.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter. You've got more in common than you have that separates,
There you
and
go.
that's why Pan African ideology really started in the diaspora. Yeah,
Yes, it did. Yeah, it did.
you think of if you think of uh
Garvey.
Marcus Garvey, and Hubert Harrison, who influenced Garvey, and W.E. Du Bois. Um, it was Garvey's Black Star that is the Black Star that we see on the Ghana flag. It's the same
Mm.
star that we see on the Senegal flag.
Mm.
It's the it was the Pan African Congress that happened in Manchester that was laid the foundation for independence. Well,
Mm-hmm.
call it so-called independence because that's a discussion for another day whether we're really independent or not. But it
Mm-hmm.
definitely laid the foundation, and I think that's because when you were in a hostile environment, we recognize that it's, as Kwame Nkrumah says, we need to unite or perish.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's not an option. We have to, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of the people that watch the show are probably all over the world. Something that we do in the diaspora, I'm sure you do it in Ireland as well. From a young age, when I walk down the street and I see a black man, I just give a little head nod. Yeah, a little head nod. Um, what I found interesting is when you move to the continent, obviously that doesn't happen because everyone's
Okay.
black. It doesn't happen because everyone's
You
black.
can't. You go.
And
You
I
go.
realized, and I realized, so what is that about? Why when we're in the diaspora and we're walking past each other, do we give a little? And that's because it's an unwritten contract, unsaid verbal agreement. Anything happens to you, I've got your back, bro. Anything happens to me, you got my back, bro. Yeah.
Right.
And there's been so many times in Birmingham, New Street on a night out. I just be walking down the street, I see some black guys fighting, and I'm in there.
You're in.
And you know what I'm saying? So there is a recognition that we need each other to not only survive but to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Pan-Africanism is at its root. If you take it on a continental level, we have these independent, so-called independent, I call them flag
Mm-hmm.
independent nations,
Amen.
and they're trying to make trade deals against, with the European Union, who's unified. who has, a single market of hundreds of millions of people,
There you
who
go.
has the proceeds of the loot of colonialism and neocolonialism. And here we have Togo trying to make a deal. Togo is, of course, going to be ripped off. Yeah,
Exactly.
of course, it's going to be ripped off. But what about if Togo joins forces with Burkina Faso, joins forces with Ghana, joins forces with Benin, joins forces with the 54 African countries and
Sheesh.
said, we're negotiating as a block. Yeah. And actually, if you don't reach an agreement with us, you can forget about the cocoa from Ghana. You can forget about the gold from Cote d'Ivoire. You can forget about the cobalt from Congo. You can forget about the lithium from Zimbabwe. You can forget timber from the Central African Republic. That is the point. That
You
is
know
the
your
point of
minerals.
Pan
That's one thing.
Africanism.
I'm a Zimbabwean. You know your
Yeah.
minerals.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Zimbabwe, I'm glad you brought up Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe was another moment of my mind opening up. So it was in 2000 when Mugabe did the land reform. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the BBC, they were trying to, they might as well have been doing a Hollywood horror movie the way that they
Mm-hmm.
were depicting it.
Ah,
They were just like, look at these white people running for their lives, just
ah.
completely decontextualizing everything.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
never once mentioned the Lancaster Agreement. For
Yeah.
those that don't know, the Lancaster Agreement was signed by the racist white settler regime of Rhodesia.
Yeah.
The ZANU at the time it was ZANU and ZAPU, which later would become ZANU PF. Um, and the agreement was that America and Britain would compensate would compensate the white farmers who would give up their land to the liberation movement in Zimbabwe because they weren't fighting for one man one vote. They were fighting for land. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
Mugabe, by the year 2000, the veterans that had given their lives, that had lost family members, that had lost sisters and brothers for this revolutionary struggle was like, where's the land?
Mm-hmm.
We fought this long battle from the bush for
There
our
you
land.
go.
Where's the land? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So because Britain and America reneged on their agreement that they would give the white farmers would give up the land and that would be compensated for it,
Yes, sir.
Mugabe took things into his own hands. But the way that it was reported
Yes, sir.
versus the reality made me realize that we really need to tell our own stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's that old saying which we put on the website, which is we're with the lions, not the hunters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to the old saying, until the lion can tell its own story, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that we need to tell our own stories, and we need to understand that we're stronger together, economically, politically, socially, culturally.
On the Mugabe front,
Mm.
you know, when I went to start doing my little fair share of studying on Mugabe, again, watching that journey of how he tried to believe them and be the best he could be, and just watching the interviews, and I remember his demeanor, and you watch
Mm.
his demeanor change over time,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and now that you see it in hindsight, poor man was like the deal you promised me that you never kept.
Mm.
But one of the things that struck me when I would go back and watch those interviews was, the tone that people question freedom fighters at any point of like, well, can't you settle here? We've just come out of there, and acting like there was the worst, and we've come out of there, meaning we should be comfortable where we are. And it strikes me like, goodness me, I'm watching something in black and white, and they're still using that same tactic of trying to kind of, attack and destabilize the movement by saying, stop here. And this is the question I'm going to ask you now. It's like, you must be really proud of yourself, because you can watch someone like Mugabe and you can actually find something in common with that, that attack on what you're doing for the community,
Yeah.
globally. Um, and I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, even the way you've been, your platform was attacked, and censorship on your platform and what you're doing. What is, in your own words, what is the goal behind that for them, and the fear behind that? Why is there such a desire to stifle the movement?
Yeah. Another great question. So we talked off camera about our dislike for candy sewings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do dislike candy sewings. However, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Right.
So one thing that she did say, which I do agree with, black people need to get off the Democratic plantation. Yeah.
Mm.
Not to jump on the Republican plantation, but to go
Mm-hmm.
back to the revolutionary spirit of Malcolm, who said it's the difference between a fox and a wolf.
Right.
Yeah. A fox will smile, and then when you get close, it will bite you. And a
Right.
wolf will growl, showing you his teeth, and still bite you. Yeah. He said he preferred the wolf because at least he knew where he stood with the wolf. Uh, Personally, I think they're both as bad as each other. You
Right.
know, the
Yeah.
Republicans and the
Of course.
Democrat, two sides of the same backside. Yeah. Two sides of the same coin. So on African Stream, as uh, as a Pan African organization, we delved into the plight of Africans in America. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what people call African Americans. On our platform, we call them Africans in America.
I love
Uh,
that.
um,
I love that.
yeah, but so in doing so, we ripped apart Donald Trump and we ripped apart Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Harris had a good record. We wouldn't have done it, but she doesn't. She has a terrible
Mm-hmm.
record. She called
Mm-hmm.
herself the top cop. She imprisoned people for smoking weed, then laughed and joked about smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She kept evidence out of the courtroom which would have exonerated someone. And then when he did finally get exonerated, never apologized. There's so much. So
Mm-hmm.
what had happened is, as we got so popular, the black bourgeoisie class also followed us. Yeah. The types of the Joe Ann Reeds, who was a presenter for MSNBC, all these types of black bourgeoisie. The guy from Roots, what's his name? The guy with a big afro from Roots, who's a big Democratic supporter. Um, so they took offense. Not when we statistically we criticized Trump more than we criticized Biden and Harris.
Right.
But
Right.
but but they took offense whenever we took criticize Biden and Harris,
Right.
even
Right.
though they're backing a genocide. They take APAC money.
Right.
Uh, like I mentioned previously, she has a terrible record as a prosecutor. She never even claimed to be black until the election.
Right.
Before that, she was really leaning into the Indian heritage. So they really took offense to our fact-based reporting on both.
Mm-hmm.
And the essence of our reporting was this: the Democrats are not going to do nothing for you. The Republicans are not going to do for you. Come back to the source.
Mm.
Yeah. Come back to the source. This is where you're powerful. Yeah. You can be a downtrodden, oppressed minority over there, but really put your energy back into Africa. That was the essence of our
Mm.
reporting. Um,
Mm.
but they really didn't like it. So to us, the attacks were partisan and they were deliberate because it happened like a couple of months before the election. But there were
Are you
signs.
saying then it was an inside job? If that, like, it was a crack from the inside that enabled it to kind of cut through the way that it did. And for anybody who doesn't have any context to that, which majority of people watching, they'll know that the House of Senate actually, what is his name, Timmis, that the
Anthony
guy,
Blinken, he's the
Anthony
Secretary of
Blinken,
State. Anthony
Secretary of
Blinken.
State,
So
who,
for European context, for people based in Europe, that's the foreign minister. Yeah.
right,
In the UK, the foreign minister, the foreign secretary, is the second most powerful politician in the country. That's David Lammy.
Right.
Um, so Anthony Blinken is the Secretary of State. In the US, it's slightly different because the vice president has quite a lot of power, but you could
Mm.
argue he's the third most powerful politician in the US. And what's surprising about the press conference is normally his press secretary gives the conference, and he came in and just talked about us. So all these journalists usually they're taking quotes from what the press secretary came, and then when they see Anthony Blinken, they're like, "Oh, some big news is coming," and then they talked about our organization, which is manned by a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds based in Nairobi, Kenya. It was bizarre. It was
Special.
bizarre. But let me just give some context. Let me give
Yes,
some
yes,
context to the
yes.
viewers.
Go on, go on.
So we knew something was coming because it first started the attacks from the liberal, the what they call the liberal media, the MSNBCs, the CNNs, MSNBC, uh, they came first. So the first one was a reporter from, is it MSNBC? He wrote me an email. It was the rudest email. He goes, African Stream has been named in a report that you guys are spreading disinformation to 40 million black African Americans.
Now
Do you want to?
remind us, is NSBC sorry, the left wing, is it more left wing or is it
No,
more
it's the
right wing?
liberal. It's the liberal. They're not.
Jeez.
I reject the claim left wing because
Okay.
these guys are not on the left. Where
Okay.
Africa Stream's on the left. There's
Okay.
there's a liberal wing to empire and imperialism, and there's a conservative wing. None of it is left. Yeah,
Okay.
none of it is left.
So
When you make
continue.
people, yeah, I'll continue. When you make people, die because they don't have healthcare, that's not exactly left wing. Um, but anyway, so MSNBC, it's the liberal media. They said you've been accused of spreading misinformation towards 40 million African Americans. Do you want to respond to this claim? He sent me on a Sunday evening. Do you want to respond to this claim by Tuesday, 2 p.m.? Yeah. And then he sent me another email. So I made a mistake. Do you want to respond to this email by Monday, 2 p.m.? So he's sending me in the evening, telling me to respond by 2 p.m. And he's not even saying what the accusation is. So that's like me saying to you, there's accusations that you're a liar. Do you want to respond to those claims? Your first question would be, what am I accused of lying about? Yeah. So if you're gonna say, so we did a comprehensive response to him, and it went viral. I think because I was pissed off by Tuesday 2 p.m.,
Mm-hmm.
Monday 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it angrily, but it came up, humbly. I'll say humbly, it came out really well. So it went viral. It went viral. So viral that he turned his Instagram to private. And yeah, we grew like by maybe 100,000 followers and all sorts. Yeah. So that was the first attack. In that report, sorry, that they said we spread misinformation, they put us alongside the Breakfast Club. Yeah. Reza Islam from Nation of Islam, Shade Room, I think it's called. It's like a bunch
Okay.
of random, very different organizations and media personalities. With Shade Room, they at least gave an example in their report. With us, they didn't. So that was the first attack. The guy made his Instagram page private, his Twitter page private, and we grew. So it helped us. Then in the lead up to the US elections, maybe 6 months before, we did a report that said, um, no matter who wins the presidential elections, US drones are going to rain down on Somalia. Yeah. So we listed from George W. Bush, Barack Obama,
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump, Joe Biden. All of them have rained drones down to on Somalia. So irrespective of who wins, bombs are going to drop down on Somalia. Yeah. So we did that, and then Voice of America, which is a US state-funded propaganda outlet, which bases in overseas, they did a response, a video response, and an article response. Yeah. But because of what happened to Marquise, the guy from NBC, the woman who's based in Kenya, she didn't want to put her name to the article. So she initially put the article up. We took a screenshot, and then she changed her name to an A-list name,
Wow.
which to us is a great compliment. You're writing
Mm-hmm.
bullshit, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't even want to
Mm-hmm.
put your name on it because you know
Mm-hmm.
what we
Mm-hmm.
did what we
Mm-hmm.
did to the last guy.
Right,
Uh,
right, right.
so we did a response to this. Again, it went viral. Um, we quoted Amnesty International and Somali NGOs and all these types of things because they said our reporting on Somalia was incorrect. There'd only been five or three civilian deaths. We were able to prove categorically that that's not the case. Yeah.
Mm.
And then they did a YouTube video, and in the YouTube video, they just got what they call ratioed. Every comment is just them saying, "You guys got destroyed by African Stream." You got... So anyway, they had two attempts. They had two attempts, failed miserably. So I feel like they tried to delegitimize us first through their propaganda outlets. That
Uh-huh.
didn't work. And then someone must have said to the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, these guys are a real problem. We've tried with MSNBC, we've tried with Voice of America. You might need to just go nuclear. And that's when September the 13th, Friday the 13th. The funny thing about it is, I woke up that morning. I said to my wife, I don't like Friday the 13th. And she
It
said,
happened Friday the 13th?
yeah, happy Friday the 13th. She said to me, she said to me, that's a Christian thing. You're not Christian. I was like, yeah, I know I'm not Christian, but I really don't like this day. She goes, ah, that's just nonsense. And then later that day, I was going to a Eritrean wedding. I was ironing my trousers, and I have a friend that works for one of these mainstream outlets. I won't say which one, Somali brother, and he sent me the video, and I thought it was AI. He's like, bro, I just saw this. You got to be careful. I thought it was AI. I called him. And I was like, bro, is that AI? He's like, nah, bro, I wouldn't play with you. And then my just time just stopped. You know what I'm saying? You could just imagine one of the world's most powerful politicians talking about something that you set up, even quoted the website. I'll be honest with you, bro. The next few days, I had I had a different grasp of reality. I was like, is this like am I awake? Like, has there anything ever happened to you that's so surreal? Do you like, am I awake? Are you blinking? Like, well, oh, when I start blinking, and then it hits you that it's real. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
It's
have
not
what
like,
you mean. I know what you
you know
mean.
what I'm saying? It was crazy, bro.
Is
And then
is this positive or is
it,
this negative?
no, and then in the end, it's positive. But at the time, you're not thinking that because you're thinking of all the films you've watched. Will Smith, Enemy of the State. That's the first. Have you seen that film?
Uh-huh.
Have you
No,
seen
but
that film?
you're I'm
Okay.
getting
So
yeah.
just a quick. The government go after him, but because they're going after him, they destroy his whole life. They make up a like they tell his wife that he's cheating on her. They freeze his back. So you start thinking, like, am I now the enemy of the state? What's next? And then you're like, I'm driving my car. You think is someone following, bro? Just the paranoia that kicks in after something like that is something I wouldn't wish on nobody. It took me
Wow.
like a couple of months to get over it. And while this was all happening, I was in London at the time. I go to the UK like once a year to see my mom and dad, and my wife to see her mom and dad and whatnot. So I was in the UK at the time. But the staff is here in Nairobi. So the staff are messaging me like, "Are we going to be okay? What's going on?"
Wow.
And I'm having to be like, "Yeah, don't worry, things are going to be okay." It was a madness, bro. It was a madness. But yeah, everything happens for a reason. Uh, Obviously, we lost our big platforms. So on Instagram, we had like 890,000 followers. On TikTok, we had 980. YouTube, we had 470,000. Uh, all those platforms got taken down. TikTok was a surprising one, but it happened. And then we're just building up again now. We're just building up again now. But our supporters are really like we got the best
Ye-
supporters in the world. Our
definitely,
Patreon,
definitely.
our Patreon like tripled. Everyone's reaching out. People see, had this have happened 10, 15 years ago, then people might have believed the smears, but not
Mm-hmm,
in this day and
mm-hmm,
age. They were
mm-hmm,
like, you
mm-hmm.
guys, like the same with Ibrahim Traore, you've seen it. When they
Yeah,
said,
definitely.
he's taking the goal to enrich
Yeah,
himself,
yeah,
blah
yeah.
blah blah. No one was buying it. And then recently, this fake Human Rights Watch report where they said, oh, the Burkina Faso government had killed 130, and the BBC did the headline and Al Jazeera did the headline, but when you actually read the details of the story, that's not the case. So
Mm-hmm,
people are not buying it. People are not buying it anymore. But yeah, bro, I'll be honest, it was a scary time because I covered as a journalist in the UK before I set up Africa's Dream. I covered the Julian Assange case,
mm,
and Julian Assange was kept in Belmarsh on the lockup 23 and a half hours a day for publishing material that exposed US war crimes. So you start thinking
mm,
like, is that what's gonna
mm-hmm,
happen to me?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know what I'm
mm-hmm,
saying? I would never do this, but he tried to commit suicide in prison.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
There's all sorts went on hunger strike.
mm-hmm,
Uh, yeah, your mind goes to different. And then obviously I'm married as well. I'm
mm-hmm,
married. At the time I had a small boy. I still do have a small boy
mm-hmm,
now. I've got two small boys. So you're just thinking
mm-hmm,
all sorts. You're thinking all sorts.
mm-hmm,
But then it's part and parcel of what we're the reason why we do what we do,
mm-hmm,
isn't it? Like that no one's gonna allow you to make any real impact without any resistance.
mm.
So
So
that was
that takes me to
that
my
was just part
next
of the resistance.
question because it's like so many people I know talk down on the power of media and the tool of media. Why I say that is because I don't know if you've ever heard the comment from certain Africans of like, okay, we're just talking as Africans, but what are we actually doing?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get this, I heard this so much, it's
yeah,
nonsense.
yeah,
But here you're actually seeing the power of you shifting the identity, shifting the narrative so much that they're threatened by it, so much that your life now feels so under danger. But in a moment like that, when it feels as though the rug can be swept from under your feet, how powerful is still the tool of media for restoring our dignity and identity when it can be taken from that? So what's your take on that? You get the question?
yeah. I get the question. I get the question. And this is something that people have said to us straight, like, "Oh, you guys need to set up your own Instagram," which
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm,
true, but
mm-hmm.
it's not easy. I'm a journalist. I'm not a tech
Right,
guy.
right, right,
You
right, right.
know what I'm saying? There's like all sorts that goes into it. The problem is, brother, is that you was relying on their social media to get your message across. We need our
Mm-hmm,
own. All of
mm-hmm,
that is facts, but there need to be greater minds than mine doing that. Yeah, everyone
mm-hmm,
has their contribution. Everyone has their contribution. So there's enough tech savvy brothers and sisters out there that can do this, and I'm sure there are in the process right now. But it's a long journey. It's a long journey, but it does speak to the idea of independence, isn't it?
mm-hmm,
That's what it's
mm-hmm,
down to.
mm-hmm,
You're relying. It says on their terms and condition on a lot of these social media platforms that we
mm-hmm,
allow you to be set up and hosted by us. But at any point we can take you off.
mm-hmm,
Um, so yeah, but to answer the question about the power of media, the first battle is the emancipation of the mind. That's the first
mm-hmm,
thing, and then that leads to other things. That leads to, when people here in Kenya, for example, the thing that surprised me since moving here is the Somali diaspora. I tell my Somali friends back in the UK, Kenya is like your Wakanda. You guys are killing it here. The way
mm-hmm,
that they collectivize their money and they build, and then they reinvest and build. The beginning of that journey is belief, isn't it?
mm-hmm,
Without any belief, You ain't doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it takes a few Somali brothers to believe in themselves, and they convince a
Mm-hmm.
few of us Somali brothers. I'm only using that example because it translates into all fields,
Yeah. Yeah.
sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're a sports fan, but
Yeah. Huge.
in football, there's no black managers.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Talk
There's
about it.
hardly any black football managers.
Talk
So
about
the
it.
idea is these guys are the athletes, but they don't have
Yeah.
the brains. They
Exactly.
don't have the leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't have. So emancipating the minds uh, of the oppressed and the oppressor. Yeah,
Mm.
and so I can't remember who said the quote, but uh, when we liberate Africa, it will liberate you guys as well. Yeah,
Mm.
it will liberate you guys as well because who wants to be part of an oppressive class? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Who wants to be part of an oppressive class? The land isn't paved with milk and honey when
Mm.
you're constantly, relying on subjugation of other people. When
Mm.
you know that, a child had to go into a mine knowing that he
Mm.
might not make it out for the
Mm.
for these iPhones, for these materials.
Mm.
Mm.
So that's the long term. That's the long term vision of
Mm.
African Stream. It's emancipation of the mind.
Definitely. Confidence. So from a young age, uh, I was told in school that Africa is in the position it is because of corrupt leadership. Yeah. That's the mainstream narrative that they push. That the corruption is an exclusively African problem. Um, and that's the reason why we're behind. Yeah. That doesn't leave a young child with much confidence in himself. It makes him think that they're predisposed to be less than, yeah,
And
uh,
corrupt.
corrupt. So what we try to do is, yes, there's corruption, but we also show them who's behind this corruption, who
Mm-hmm.
ultimately benefits, yeah, because we're not inferior in any way, shape, or form, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the reason why sometimes people used to say to us on Africa, you guys talk about history too much. How is this relevant
Oh, we
to
know
the
them.
modern day? How is this relevant to the modern day? Of course it's relevant. Of course it's relevant. Of course it's relevant to know that Mansa Musa's brother, there's evidence that he sailed to the Americas
Mm-hmm.
400 years before Christopher Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
fleet of ships. Of course it's relevant to know that you guys didn't teach us education, that actually, when the Moors entered Europe, there were
Mm-hmm.
two institutions that could be generously interpreted as universities.
Mm-hmm.
The Moors built 18 universities in just Spain and Portugal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So who educated who?
Mm-hmm.
This woman on GB News said they taught sanitation. When the Moors made contact with Europeans, the feudal class, the kings and the lords, were bathing and washing once a month. Yeah. It was the Moors that taught them about sanitation, about how this has an effect on medicine, taught them algebra, taught them
Mm-hmm.
the number zero, taught them how to measure the globe, the circumference of the globe, astronomy. Yeah. So when a young 13-year-old who was taught that Africa's backwards because of corrupt leaders now learns this information, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
changes and
Yeah.
transforms
Yeah.
absolutely everything.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
you know,
And we we
sometimes,
we we know that little sorry, we know that little boy, that little black boy. Think of yourself when you were 5 years old in the UK and
mm,
myself when I was in Ireland. And those eyes of people looking at you like you were some sort of an ape.
mm,
We the kids generation, they need that freedom.
mm,
It's
100.
everything. I just think it's so powerful what you said there. It's
Yeah.
everything, man. It's everything.
Everything. I'll give you a quick story. Uh, I call him my cousin. He's not my cousin. My dad and his dad were political prisoners together. So
Wow.
so then me and him are like, cousins, even though we're not blood related. So I used to go visit him in London when we were kids. Like periodically, like every couple of months we'd go there every year, whatnot. And my cousin, I'll call him my cousin, who also shares a name like me, Ahmed. I remember showing up to his house and he goes, Ahmed, 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 my dad's got that thing to make our house smell nice like white people's house. And I don't know why, it just stuck to me. It just stuck to me like, smell nice like white people's house. Uh,
Hmm.
and the amount of African children dotted around the diaspora that saying things like that all the time. Yeah. Saying things like that all the time. Imagine 100 years from now, that same kid runs up to another kid and goes, Ahmed, 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 Ahmed. My dad's got that incest that smells like the Yoruba tribe. Can you just imagine how powerful that will be? Do you know what I'm saying?
Don't make me cry on the show, man. Don't make me
You know
cry
what I'm
on the
saying though?
show, man.
So
I
we
get
like
exactly
that's
what you mean.
possible. That's possible. That is possible. And that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're fighting for. Yeah.
Ahmed, you can make a grown man. Honestly, I'm feeling myself tearing up because this is really heavy, man. It's really serious. Wow, man.
It's coming. It's coming. Our time is coming. Uh, when what's interesting is when Kwame Nkrumah was toppled in the coup, backed by the United States because of a book that he wrote. I forget which one it was. Was it? I think it was Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Yeah.
Mm,
So we've now got all these declassified documents. Some of them were published recently by Declassified UK that showed how furious this book made the US and the
mm,
UK. They recalled
mm,
their ambassador from Ghana, etc., etc. But what was the saddest thing about the coup against Kwame Nkrumah is they managed, because they controlled the newspapers and international media, they managed to convince the Ghanaian people that somehow they'd remove the tyrant. Yeah.
mm.
You can go onto the archives and you can see Ghanaians in Accra, in Kumasi, celebrating Kwame Nkrumah being toppled. Yeah. When I see that, it kind of breaks my heart, but then
Mm-hmm.
also it gives me solace because that can't happen today.
Yeah, yeah,
That cannot happen today.
yeah.
So that the fact that, what they were just testing the waters with Michael Langley and Africom and what he said about they
Mm-hmm.
just put a little statement out there and
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see how
Mm-hmm.
the people
Mm-hmm.
reacted.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
people reacted in such a way they're like, oh damn, we're in a different time.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a
Mm-hmm.
different time. So
And it's because of you, brother. It's because of
look,
people like
because of
you.
there's a we've just got a microphone that we're putting against the young, restless voice of Africans youth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So before us, there was a revolution in Mali that brought in Asima Gota. Yeah. Just when we launched African Stream, 2022. A couple of months later, uh, Ibrahim Traore came into power. So there's a movement that we just coincided with.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, definitely.
That's what there's a movement that we just coincided. We are not behind the movement. It's just this movement was happening in Francophone Africa,
Yeah,
and we just put the English voice to it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that not just us, others as well. But I think
yeah.
the thing I'm most proud about is in the English speaking world, we were on this from early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from early. What was going on
Mm-hmm.
in Burkina Faso? We were one of the first. We had a brother based in Burkina Faso, a cameraman. he just went out and just did vox pops, and that was one of the
Mm,
first times that we kind of popped up, just speaking to people on the street, because obviously the Western media was just like military men have once again taken over in Burkina Faso. Why? How come African strongmen are taking? They just framed it in this really negative way. So we just went out to the street and put a microphone towards people.
mm.
They were speaking in French. We translated it in English, and that was it. That was it. So yeah, man, and Pan African lifestyle is definitely part of doing that same thing. The
Thank you.
song, I'm gonna big you guys up, and you gotta tell me. Actually, this is my time to ask you a question. That Where does that song come from? The Ibrahim Traore, Captain
It's
Traore.
cool, right? It's
It's
cool. You gotta talk to
hard, bro.
you gotta talk to our CEO Emmanuel. He's pulling strings back there. But I'm like, yeah,
Bro,
he's thought of so many things. Like I said, people like you have been really you're really thinking of ways and all the ways, that you can push the fight, And I just kind of like I love that song as well. I'm like, man,
it's hard, man. We
like
use all of
yeah,
our posts. Whenever I posted about Ibrahim Traore, we don't even switch it up. That song is just so hard. And it's
yeah.
like,
I love it.
who's the singer? How
I,
do you
I'm
know any of them?
I'm not 100%. If it comes to mind right now, I can't remember it right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm so sorry that I can't remember it right now. But look, I'm gonna find that out, and we're gonna try and put up on the
Yeah, it took
screen.
it took me a while. Sorry, I'll let you come back. It took me a while to realize the song is Pan African lifestyle. It
Right,
took
right,
you see
right.
something, you see
Yes,
something
yes,
over and
yes,
over
yes,
again. It
yes,
took you a
yes.
while to realize something. I'm like, wow, these guys actually they're behind this whole song. So but
Hmm.
this is the thing, the revolution is multifaceted.
It
Yeah.
is.
But
It is.
the enemy attacks us on all fronts.
Yeah.
We need to be offensive on all fronts. Music, culture. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think in Burkina Faso right now they've just banned the colonial wigs and the school
Mm.
uniforms.
I love things like that.
Yeah, and for the school uniforms, imagine they used to import school uniforms.
Mm.
Yeah, why would a country that has such a rich history need to import school uniforms? Now, school uniforms have to be made through local fabric. Yeah, so our revolutionary captain, understands it's not just media, it's
Right,
music,
right.
it's defense.
Mm.
There's a volunteer force fighting against the terrorist. It's culture. It's everything, everything. Um, but yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. Honestly, like we've got like the conversation flowed so well that we got like these two really important questions that I can't let you go without
Yeah, sure,
asking
sure.
you, and that's what I want to make sure. And the two of them is this, and you can answer them in because they're kind of two in the same, in a sense. One, what is the biggest lesson you've learned
Mm.
about the revolution as what you've gone through, and two, what is the African dream? When you think about the term, the African dream, what is that in your mind? So we'll start with the lesson.
The biggest thing that I've learned is, oof, I hate to say this one, but it's just being honest. Not all skin folk are kinfolk. Um, so when you come here, you have that moment where you're a bit naive.
Mm.
Like, I'm back in the motherland. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Ah.
uh, yeah, and what you realize quite quickly is not everyone will see you. Like, just to be frank, some Kenyans see me like a Mzungu. They see me just like one of these white people.
No
Because
way.
because obviously, uh, if you're in a black majority country, you're not forced to think about race the same way.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So to them, this is a guy from the UK. He has that UK money. You know, I need to see what I can get from him. Yeah. Took me a
Mm-hmm.
while to realize that even though I see them like me, not all of them see me like them. Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of diaspora, who are moving back to the continent need to be aware of. Um, you should. It's not that you should divide yourself. It's just being aware of how
Mm-hmm.
you might be seen by
Mm-hmm.
people on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
that should take you into the African dream. What's the African dream?
the African dream is unity and sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is everything. That literally is everything. Um, in Nigeria, we criticize Nigeria a lot because it's had neo-colonial puppet regime after neo-colonial puppet regime. But they did try to do something quite useful. I think it was under Buhari, just before Tinubu came into power, where they banned foreign models from appearing on the billboards. Yeah,
Yes, I'd seen that. I'd
yeah,
seen that.
yeah. And they also banned foreign voiceover artists. So imagine you're sitting in Lagos or Abuja or Kano State and you're watching a TV commercial and it's a British guy. It doesn't make any sense.
It don't make no
Does it,
sense.
it doesn't make no sense. So they recognize like this doesn't help our people as
Yeah,
they move into the world. So
yeah.
sovereignty is everything. Sovereignty doesn't mean, by the way, that we're reclusive, that
Of
we're
course.
isolationist. Yeah. Before Here's something that people struggle to understand. Some Pan-Africanists anyway, is before our connection, or the connection, that's the wrong word. Before colonialism, the colonial experience with Europeans, we were trading with the rest of the world. We were
Mm-hmm.
trading with India. We were trading with China. We were trading with Southern Europe. We were trading with the Americas. There was exchange, yeah. But because we were in an abusive relationship for 400 years with Europeans,
Right.
some of us are now like that abused, sorry to say this, abused woman that's like F men, men are
Yeah,
trash,
yeah,
men are trash. No, no, the man that beat you up was trash.
yeah.
Yeah, the man that took your phone off you and controlled your finances was trash.
Right,
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we can't trade with the rest of the world. We just want to
right,
trade on an equal footing. We want to
right,
trade from a position of respect, not from a position of
right,
servitude.
right.
We don't want to have the relationship that the neck has with the rope. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We want to have an equal relationship. Um, but we can only do that if we have sovereignty. Yeah,
Yeah,
these guys are parasites. They feed off any sort of, a parasite will feed off an illness or
yeah.
any a scab. If you've got a little cut in your leg and you get
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
flies
mm-hmm,
and they
mm-hmm,
come in. So that's why we need to be unified and strong. When we're unified and strong,
mm-hmm,
there's no scabs on our legs.
mm-hmm.
There's no way for the parasites, for the
Yeah,
flies to come
yeah,
in.
amen.
So that's the dream. That's the dream. It really pains me when I used to, I thank my parents for this. I used to go to Sudan all the time, constantly go to Sudan every year, every 2 years, every year, every 2 years. When I was a kid, it used to, like, I'd be saying to my cousins, yo, let's play PlayStation, let's go out and play football. They're like, nah, I've got homework. And they're studying all day long, studying all day long. Um, and the same cousins are now like, before the war, were driving a rickshaw in Sudan. So the idea that it's just hard work and merit is bullshit. The
Yes,
bullshit illusion
yes, yes,
that they have sold us to make
yes,
themselves feel better of their
yes,
privileged status. The truth
yes.
of the matter is, had the cousin who used to do his homework every single day, this guy would be doing 3 hours homework. Had he been born in the UK and I'd been born in Sudan, there's a good
Mm,
chance I would be driving a rickshaw and he would be the CEO and
mm,
founder of African Stream. And that's just not
mm,
right. That's just not
mm,
right. And I'm
mm.
determined to I can't change it on my own, and there's many people in this battle, but I'm determined to make a contribution to change that fact. Yeah, that your mom, that you mentioned off camera, she would have the same life chances if she was born in Zimbabwe, or raised in
Mm-hmm.
Zimbabwe, as she does here.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Mm-hmm.
people don't need to yacht on these boats to
Mm.
come to a hostile land
Damn
with
right.
hostile anti-immigration bill,
Damn
where
right.
Keir Starmer is giving speeches where he sounds like Enoch.
Ah,
Yeah, we don't need to go when we're not wanted. We need to build up our continent. We need to build up our continent so our continent is strong, and so that we can, we can thrive. We can not only survive, but we can thrive in the land of our ancestors. That's the dream.
that is wow. Ahmed, my brother, it was a pleasure having you on today. Like, you are just such a pioneer. And when I get to see you now and talk to you in person, there's actually that. I hope this sounds like a compliment. There's that Kanye effect to you. And obviously now he's crazy. We don't use that. But when Kanye wasn't crazy and you could see how abstract his mind was and how
Yeah,
much of a free thinker he was. And you get to see that all that magic came from a young man who, like yourself, and I'm talking about you now, who's just really abstract, a kind of way. And you're just expressing everything and enjoying everything and feeling and moving off feeling and passion and genuine passion. And that's why it all happened for you the way it did. You know what I mean?
thank you, bro.
Yeah, no, so there's that geniusness to it of like, it just it's just like a footballer. The ball is just natural for your feet. It's just like Ronaldinho. It just that kind of way. And I'm even admiring you even more having met you today and spoken to you today in person. And wow, man. I think the whole community, on behalf of the whole community, on behalf of the Pal Show, thank you for coming on, and the listeners, thank you for coming on. And on behalf of the community, man, thank you for everything you've done, and keep on fighting, my man. Keep on fighting. This setback that happened with the platform is obviously going to make you think of what way you can cut them at the throat next. But one thing that's for certain is your stamp is on the Pan-Africanist movement of this generation. A lot of people's first time hearing stuff was through what you did. The first time we learned, oh, this is what happened really back then, or that's what happened. And it shifted and ignited so many things. So thank you so much on behalf of Pal, a fellow cousin of yours, and the whole community. Thank you so much, man. You've been a blessing today.
Thank you, brother. And let's do a Pan-African lifestyle African street link up in Nairobi. You guys are more than welcome anytime.
Let's
Anytime.
do it. Let's do it. Let's enjoy some African cuisine and have a good time 100%.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
brother.
brother.
Thank you.
And to our global Pal Nation, thank you once again for tuning in. Please keep the conversation alive. Let us know in the comments what part of today's dialogue sparked new thinking, new pride, and new action. I've been your host, Harrison Paul.
Living a dream, living the African dream.